Behavioral call center job interview questions. Interviewers ask these questions when they want to get a glimpse of who you are, how you work, how you think, and how you handle the daily struggles of a call center agent. These questions ask about your past job experiences because the way you work in the past will usually signify how you would work in the future. The questions will likely focus on your ability to handle stress, problem solve, work with a team, negotiate and communicate, and even sell. The first type is the incident specific behavioral question. These are the questions that will ask you to recall a specific event or incident in your previous job experience. The question usually starts with, tell me about a time when. And then there's the other type, the general behavioral question, where it's still asking about your working style and behavior, but it's not necessarily asking you to recall a specific event in your previous job experience. And depending on which type your interviewer asks you, you will have to answer in two different ways. To answer an incident specific behavioral question, you would need to use the STAR method. And the STAR method stands for situation, task, action, result. Now, what I like about the STAR method is it allows you to tell a story in a clear and vivid picture for the interviewer to understand. So, this is your pattern so you never get lost when it's time to construct your answer. And here are the examples. So, tell me about a time when you had to go above and beyond for a customer. How did that go? I had this conversation with a customer named Tatiana, whose refund was refused because she returned a non returnable Chanel bag. Now, I've seen enough similar cases to hers to know that it was a hopeless case, that there was no way that the company would give her the refund. At first, she was very combative. She was demanding a supervisor, but the supervisor at the time was engaged in another call. My task, therefore, was to get Tatiana to accept the news without having to escalate her to my supervisor. So I stood my ground. I told her firmly that we cannot refund her because it's company policy, but I also acknowledged her emotions. After that, she calmed down eventually and she was no longer combative. I have handled calls like this before, but I think what made this one so hard was when she told me that she had lost her job due to the pandemic. She also admitted that she knew the handbag was non returnable, but she returned it anyway, hoping against hope that the company would refund her. I knew I should have told her again that it just wasn't possible, but I put her on hold anyway and waited for my supervisor to be available to ask if an exception was possible. My supervisor, of course, said no. I then relayed the answer to Tatiana. She thanked me, she said it was okay, and that she'll figure it out. To my surprise, the next day, she gave me a perfect 10 CSAT score. I think what made her do that, even if she didn't get the refund, was because I made her feel that she mattered and that she was being listened to, even if we both knew that it was a hopeless case. Why did you tell me about a time when you were in a high stress situation? How did you deal with it? I usually have a high tolerance for stress, but there was a period of my employment when I was struggling with stress. It was a time when the account I worked for filed for bankruptcy. This meant telling every customer who asked for a refund that they could no longer get their hard earned money. In the span of 4 months, that made up 90% of the call we got every day. It was quickly draining my energy and motivation. I was on the verge of quitting until an idea came to me. Instead of seeing the situation as hopeless and insolvable, I decided to see it as a challenge where, in the end, there would be a reward. So when our team lead promised us that it would all go back to normal once the account transitions to the new ownership, I saw that as the reward. I treated that as the reward. So I optimized my habits. I slept early, deactivated my social media accounts, and began working out. It was also the time when I discovered self help books about productivity. And after 2 weeks of doing that, it improved my resilience to stress dramatically. While the customers remained as irate as ever, my job became easier just by optimizing my routine. And after 4 months of irate calls, the company finally transitioned to new ownership and everything came back to normal. I was also offered the position of team lead. Tell me about a mistake you made in your past job and what you learned from the experience. So, when I was still a call center trainee, I was afraid of asking questions for the fear that my trainer and my co trainees would see me as clueless. So huge was my fear of looking clueless that from the start to the last day of my training, I never did ask a single question, even if I was confused the whole time. So when the day to take calls came, I highly regretted it. On our first day, we were expected to assist customers like experienced agents. It was quite a shock to me. I could barely answer my customers' questions without asking for help from the tenured rep beside me. She even asked me what exactly I learned from the training, and it was a humiliating experience, but it was also a wake up call. So, to survive the next days, I listed down all my questions and confusions, and I sat down with my trainer. I was so desperate that I practically begged her to help me. Luckily, she was so open and helpful to me, and we talked for more than an hour. At that moment, I realized that in order to learn something, you need to be willing to look clueless first. That there's actually nothing wrong with looking clueless. After all experts used to be clueless the first time. Tell me about a time when your integrity as a QA was put to the test. Since I was the only QA in our account, my friends in the office knew that I was definitely the one rating their calls. So one day, one of them indirectly told me that it would be nice if I could pick the calls where they highly scored and not the ones where they failed, so they would get the performance bonuses. The suggestion was very subtle. It was subtle, but it was definitely there. For me, it was just out of the question. I've always been operating on the principle that instead of giving someone a fish, you should teach them how to fish. It was a tough and awkward situation to be in, but I did tell them firmly that it would be unfair for everyone else. I also added that if they need help, they could ask me anything. Eventually, I ended up discussing the mistakes they made during their calls and what they could do to score higher the next time. And since then, they never again broached the subject of manipulating their scores. And if they did, then I don't think I'd be able to keep them as friends anyway. Describe a time when you weren't happy at work and why. I'm not happy at work every time I encounter a customer whose problem could have been solved if the previous agent only followed the first contact resolution. It's honestly one of my pet peeves because, first, it wastes time, and second, it leaves a bad taste in the customer's mouth. What I usually do when I encounter something like this is to assist the customer as best as I can so she won't call again for the same issue. And if I notice the same issue happening again, I would take note of it and then bring it to the attention of my team lead so she can remind everyone. This always solves the problem. If there's one person who can keep issues from happening again, it's the team lead because he does a weekly one-on-one meeting, not only with her team, but also with other team leads. Give me an example of when you worked well with a team. In my previous position as an agent, I had a colleague who was not only a newbie to our account, but also to the call center industry. She passed the training, but she was clearly having a hard time adjusting to customers, not to mention the information overload. There were times when she would escalate a call, even if it was only a simple issue. It was affecting our overall stat as a team. And our team's goal at the time was to reach at least a 90% QA score every month so we would get our team's performance bonus. So I decided to volunteer to sit next to Ella. That's the name of the newbie. And our team lead and I would take turns assisting her. When he's out in a meeting or taking soup calls, I would be the one beside Ella helping her with questions, especially about call de escalation. I did that for 2 months until she finally became better at everything and I didn't have to coach her. But within those 2 months of Ella being a newbie, our team managed to score an average of 93% each month. This meant getting our team's bonus on top of our individual bonuses. It was a challenging task, but it was very fulfilling. So those are the incident-specific behavioral questions. But what if the behavioral question is not exactly asking you to recall a specific event in your past experience? What if it's just asking a question in general? For example, how are you able to balance high quality customer service with speed? So in this case, it would not make sense to use the STAR method because you're not recalling a specific incident in your past. In this case, you can just directly answer the question and then support that answer. So it will be answer plus the supporting explanation. So here's how I would answer this question. I'm able to balance high quality customer service with speed by knowing exactly when to optimize for quality and when to optimize for speed. For example, an irate customer end's goal is not only to solve her problem, but also for her frustrations to be heard. You cannot rush this type of customer. She will always want to be heard one way or another. In this case, you have to optimize for quality more than speed. On the other hand, there are customers who are in a hurry or are already tech savvy and don't need much explanation, in which case you have to optimize for speed. They'll only be irritated if you don't speed up, so you should never slow these customers down. You need to keep it brief and simple. So by knowing when to speed up and when to optimize for quality, I can easily meet my stats and adjust when I'm lagging behind. Also, irate customers are usually few and far between, so even if I spend more time with them, I can easily compensate as soon as I start assisting fast customers with uncomplicated issues. So with this type of behavioral question, as long as your answer paints you in a good light, you're good. What I like about this answer is it's so detailed and specific. It shows the interviewer two things: that you work methodically and that you have great expertise in customer service. When are you usually most satisfied with your job? I feel most satisfied when I'm able to help a customer with a particularly difficult issue. It just makes me feel useful. And when I feel useful, I feel happy and motivated. Oh, and the performance bonus also doesn't hurt. There are, of course, times when the company policy limits what I can do for the customer. So in cases like this, I just satisfy myself with a mantra that as long as I'm doing everything I can for the customer, I am useful and I am happy. This answer shows that you are an employee who feels motivated and happiest every time you are able to demonstrate your expertise. And the lucky part is this is something that you always do in customer service. You're basically demonstrating your expertise. This is a great answer if you're applying for a customer service position. Do you prefer to work as part of a team or independently? I'm an introvert, so I naturally prefer working independently. But if there's something I learned from my 4 years of working in customer service, it is that I cannot do everything without working with a team. So it has taught me how to work well with a team. In my previous account, we were serving high-profile clients, so there simply wasn't much room for mistakes. There were also constant changes and updates, so everyone in the office had to interact with one another to make sure that we're all on the same page. I couldn't have possibly done that job without the help of my team lead and colleagues. This answer shows that even if you are an introvert and you naturally gravitate to tasks where you have to work independently, You can also work well with a team just fine. What is your typical way of dealing with an irate customer? For me, there are different types of irate customers, but they all have one thing in common, and that is they all want their emotions to be heard. So I make sure that whatever upsets a customer, I always give him or her the floor to vent. Once he's gotten over that initial surge of emotion, then I immediately ask for facts, and then I present the solution. Time and time again, I notice that when you do listen and acknowledge a customer's emotion, he will also give you the floor for a rational discussion. What I like about this answer is it's highlighting the benefit of the answer. It shows why listening to customer and empathizing with them first before getting to the resolution will help calm an irate customer down. Another thing, this was also drawn from an actual experience. So this makes the answer sound even more credible. Some people mention behavioral questions as synonymous to situational questions, but there's actually a difference between the two. So behavioral questions ask only about your past job experiences, whereas situational questions ask about hypothetical questions, scenarios that hasn't happened yet to you. So, but they all have the same goal, and that is to know exactly how you think, who you are, how you work, and how you handle the daily struggles of a call center agent. And in my next video, I'm gonna talk about situational call center interview questions. And once it's ready, I'm gonna link it up here at the top right corner of this video. And thank you so much for watching. And that is all for today. Bye.